Welcome, Prealgebra students. We're in lesson 58. This is one of my favorite lessons. We are going to go over the dirt problem. I love the dirt problem. Actually, it's the distance problem, and the distance problem is explained by a formula that we call dirt. And that formula is distance is equal to rate times time. Or, well, why did I write an R? If you write D, R times T, and you put a little line right here, it kind of looks like the word dirt, doesn't it? And the equal sign. That's kind of cool. Okay, I get way too excited about math. Y'all know this. So, we call this a dirt problem. We also call it a dirt problem because it's talking about distance. And when we are talking about distance, we're talking about traveling. And when we travel over the earth, and the earth is made of dirt. So if that helps you to remember the formula for a distance problem, then by all means use it, right? So it's a travel. It's about distance. Distance means travel. We travel over the earth. Man, that's a terrible E. And the earth is made of dirt. And that's your formula. Your formula is distance equals rate times time. Let me explain that. All right, I'm going to clear this page. Take your notes if you need to. You can pause me, I don't care. But press play to get the rest of the lesson. All right, so our first problem, and I'll explain it as we go through. It's 58.1. So Helen could travel 40 miles per hour. So 40 miles per hour, right? How long would it take her to travel 6,000 miles? How can we figure that out? Oh my goodness. So first we have to figure out a rate of travel. So we know she can go 40 miles in an hour, right? So Helen's rate is 40 miles per hour. We don't know what her time is, right? That's what we're asking, is how long. We're trying to find the time. That's our variable, is T. But we do know our final distance here. This is her rate. This is her time. This is her distance. Remember the formula? Distance equals rate times time. So we take the distance and we put it in here, 6,000. That's our distance. Her rate is 40. Right here in the formula, or in the problem, it said what the rate was. So 40 right here. We don't know what the time is. How long? That's what it's asking us. So we have to do some math to figure that out. We know that any whole number in front of a variable, and even though it's a capital number, it's still a variable. The reason it's a capital number is because this is a formalized formula. It stands for something specific. It stands for time. And usually in a formula, when you have a variable that is always the same letter, it stands for a specific thing, it's going to be capital most of the time. That's okay. So 40 times T is 6,000. We know all we have to do is divide because that's the inverse operation of multiplication. So we divide everything on both sides to keep it balanced by 40. This cancels because it's the inverse operation. And we're left with t right here because 40 over 40 is 1. 1 times t. We know there's an invisible 1 right there. We don't care. We're just going to leave it like that. But we do need a calculator because that's a big number. So use your calculator. 6,000 divided by 40 equals 150. So it took her 150 hours. That's her time, because that's her time. We know it's hours. 150 hours at 40 miles per hour to go 6,000 miles. So if she drove for like 12 hours a day, that's ridiculous. That's like, 12 days of driving. That's crazy. Okay. That's all you have to do to solve one of these problems. You find the rate, you find the time, you find the distance. Even if you don't know what it is, you find where it's asking, okay? And then you remember your formula and you substitute, just like we've been doing before, where we substitute X for 4 or P for 3 or whatever. That's what this was leading up to. We were trying to teach you how to find information and substitute it into a formula. Before we gave it to you, now we're making you look for it in a word problem. So let's do another one. Make sure you write this down so you have a sample in your notes so you know how to work these. That's the whole point. So you know how to work them, you get a sample problem. Here is another sample problem. And you know what? I'm going to pause the video just long enough to write this down because I know you don't want to sit there and watch me write it. All right. It's a good thing I took time to write this out because this was a lot of writing. And you guys don't want to sit there and watch me write this stuff. That's kind of boring. So, Harry could travel 350 miles in 7 hours. So let's remember our formula. D equals rate times time. Distance is miles, typically. Miles are kilometers, feet, inches, meters. Those are all distances. So think about length. That's your distance. So 350 miles, that's our distance. 7 hours, that's our time. So we don't have a rate. So what was his speed? Speed is the same as rate. So this first question is asking us to find his rate. So all we do is we drop in the distance and the time. So the distance is 350. We don't know his rate, but we do know his time is 7. And it's okay if they're out of order. It works the same way. They're factors, right? We know from the commutative property of multiplication that it doesn't have to be in a certain order. If they're multiplied against each other, you still get the same answer, right? 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. Easy peasy. So that means that if we divide both sides by 7, we don't have to rearrange it. We can leave it just like it is. This is 1, so 1R, and we know the 1 is invisible, but it's always here. 350 divided by 7, I happen to know that 35 divided by 7 is 5, and then I just stick that 0 on the end, and that's 50. So he was going at 50 miles per hour. So we can write that here. I'm going to do it in a different color. 50 miles per hour equals his rate. All right. So now let's do another one. Let's do this in blue. How long would it take him to travel 800 miles? So now they're changing our distance. So this is our distance 2. So let's do a distance 2 problem. So let's do 800 miles equals, and our rate is 50. How long? That's our time for our new problem. So we don't know how long. That's our time. So we're going to do the same thing we did before, only this time we divide by the rate instead of the time. So we divide everything by 50, and this cancels out. 50 over 50 is 1t, right? 800 divided by 50, I believe, is going to be 16. I think that's right. Let me double check. 800 divided by 50. Yeah, all right, I got that one. Good. Sometimes, my old brain, I have to check it. So it would take him 16 hours to travel 1,800 miles if he stayed at the same speed. So 16 hours would equal his time. Okay, so at the same speed, so 50 miles per hour, that's our rate. How far? That's going to be our distance. We don't know what the distance is in 12 hours, and that's our time. So we're going to do it again. Our distance, this time our distance is our variable. So we put D here because we don't know what it is. Our rate, it's the same speed that we've been using, so it's 50. And our time is 12 hours. So we multiply that times 12, right? So 50 times 12, that's going to be 600, I do believe. So let me look. 50 times 12. Yes. So our distance is 600 miles. That one was pretty easy to do. So 600 miles, and miles is just mi, equals our distance. Those were not hard to solve if you remember the formula and the way you have to write it. And it's just dirt. Distance equals rate times time. Okay? And if you want to test that formula, think about if you're going to, let's say you're going on vacation, right? And you are traveling at 30 miles an hour. That's not very fast. Times, and you go for 2 hours. 30 miles for 2 hours, 30 miles an hour for 2 hours is going to take you 60 miles down the road. Do you see how that works? This is your rate, this is your time, this is your distance. And we just flipped it, right? So distance equals rate times time. It does work. You just have to remember how to think about it. So if we use this formula with these types of word problems, we will get the right answer. Just think about dirt. Traveling over the dirt. All right, that's all we have for lesson 58. So I will see you guys in lesson 59.